The Buddha's truth. Trust in the power of the mind. The path starts with right view. Notice, that's not right knowledge, it's right view. Knowledge comes later with the different noble attainments. With right view, the Buddha's letting you borrow some of his insights, borrow some of his knowledge. You take it on as a working hypothesis that this is going to be a good path to follow. As the Buddha said, it's admirable in the beginning, admirable in the middle, admirable in the end. But the best is saved for last. In the beginning, you're making a gamble. You don't know if the Buddha is right or wrong about things like rebirth or karma. But you do know that they're good things to believe, in the sense that they affirm your power to shape your life in a good way. Think about that reflection we chant regularly. I'm subject to aging, illness, death, separation from all that is dear and appealing to me. Those are the reflections that remind you that you live in a dangerous world. The things that you depend on, the things that you love, are going to be taken from you someday. So what have you got? You've got your actions, and your actions can make a difference. That's the fifth reflection. Whatever I do, for good or for evil, to that will I fall heir. That's affirming your agency. The principle that the choices you make are your choices, and that they will make a difference. That's good to believe. If you believe otherwise, that your actions have no meaning or you're not really responsible for them, you're left defenseless. This machine of the world could just grind you down, and you'd have no recourse. But here, the Buddha is saying, based on his experience, that yes, we can make a difference through our intentional actions. It's a good thing to believe. There's a discourse where he says it's like making a bet, a safe bet. If it turns out that your actions didn't give good results, no matter how good you made the actions, or if it turned out there was no rebirth, then at the very least, you've lived an honorable life. That's a thought that can sustain you. Here, the Buddha is calling on your sense of honor, that you're willing to do good even without a reward. But then again, he says it's not going to be without a reward. So, you place some trust in him. After all, are you going to place your trust in people who teach otherwise? What kind of people are they? And where would their teachings lead you if you actually followed them? I had a strange conversation once with an editor of a Buddhist magazine, talking about how you have to believe in the power of your actions, because otherwise you're left adrift. You don't know what to do. He replied, yes, I guess. I suppose so, if you act in line with your beliefs. I wondered, what kind of beliefs do you have if you don't act in line with them? You have to realize that there are a lot of things you don't know in life. The Buddha can't prove karma to you. He can't prove rebirth. But he does offer a pragmatic reason for adopting these views as right views. If you adopt them, you behave in a better way, and you behave in a safer way. It's only when you get to the first noble attainment, stream entry, where the mind steps outside of space and time for a bit, that you gain direct knowledge of these things. In the course of stepping outside of time, you realize that your experience of time has gone on for a long, long time, much longer than this one lifetime. Even if you don't see the particulars of previous lifetimes, you know that this has been going on for many, would you say years, eons? There seems to be no beginning to it. But at that point, you begin to see there's also a possible end. Because it is possible to taste the deathless and to know that it is totally free from the stress of ordinary experience. That's when you can say that you've begun to know. It's also the point in the practice where the Buddha says you actually begin your training. By that point, you've developed confirmed confidence in the Buddha that what he says on these topics is right. You also know that it was through your own efforts that you reached that experience. First, through your choices, then through the moment where you have no intention at all, and things open up. That was through your own discernment. So once you've had these things confirmed, you're really on the path. Prior to that point, you're on for a bit, and then you're off, and then you're on again, off again. You try to make it on as much as you can. But the sense of confidence in the Buddha, the sense of confidence in the path that he taught, gets a lot stronger at stream entry. People who haven't had that experience yet are making attempts at the training, but they're not really in training. But still, to whatever extent you can practice, it's all to the good. The Buddha keeps making reference to animals that have been tamed and trained, how much more they can do than if they hadn't been trained. And your mind is like that. If it just runs all over the place, it's got a lot of potentials, but it doesn't make the most of those potentials. The training is what makes the most of the mind's power to make choices, and the extent of power of what the mind can do, the power of what the mind can know. You don't really know those things until you've submitted to the training. As the Buddha says, just in the case of Jhana, the things that can be known through the practice of Jhana, the powers that can be developed through the practice of Jhana, are inconceivable. In other words, trying to figure out what a person with that level of concentration can do and can't do, that's inconceivable, to say nothing of the range of a Buddha. Our sense of what the mind can do, what the mind can know, has been greatly limited by our education. We've become sensitive to certain things that are useful for society. As society gets more and more capitalist, the education gets more and more capitalist too. Things like the humanities and religion fall to the wayside. The subjects that are actually good for your mind fall to the wayside. You get sensitized to the things that are useful for making a living, but the areas that used to be developed through the training of the mind are getting pretty stunted. We have this pride in our Western education, but we have to realize it's very good in some areas and very limited in others. That's why our sense of what the mind can do has been stunted in those other areas. There was a British academic a while back who was saying that when they talk about concentration in the canon, you have to realize that back in those days, they didn't read, so they didn't have the powers of concentration that we have now. So when they're talking about concentration, it's nothing amazing, nothing beyond what we already know, which shows you how ignorant academics can be. People in the past had to develop skills that required very strong concentration, much stronger than is required simply in reading. The power of the mind is largely untapped. So here we are, meditating, assuming that the mind does have some power. After all, if it were just the result of physical events, sitting here and meditating wouldn't make much of a difference. But the fact that you can direct your intentions, direct your acts of attention in a way that can bring stillness, a sense of ease, a sense of well-being, a sense of rapture, clarity to the mind. That's because the mind is not just on the receiving end of things. Mano pubangama dhamma mano seta mano maya. The mind is the forerunner of all experience. The mind is in charge. Things are made by the mind. There's a good reason why they put that verse at the beginning of the Dhammapada. It's the power of the mind that we're training here. The power of the mind that we're cultivating. So, it's good not to have any preconceived notions about what its limits might be. Each of us has our own karma. In terms of what we can know, how far we can develop these possibilities. But you're not going to know the potential of your mind until you work at developing it, actualizing it. This is what the practice of right concentration does. You seclude yourself from your ordinary sensual fantasies and any unskillful thoughts, and you focus attention on one thing. You think about that one thing, i.e., the breath. You work with it so that it gives rise to a sense of ease, a sense of well-being, a sense of refreshment. You energize the body. You energize the mind. Then you allow body and mind to grow calm. As you work with calming the mind, calming the breath, things begin to peel away. Things that you never saw clearly right in your own mind become a lot clearer. Fortunately, that's the aspect of meditation that's really important. You read about the other powers that can be developed through concentration, and you can say, for the time being, I know nothing about those. But I do know that the Buddha says I can put an end to suffering. That's something I want to try. It's all laid out and it all makes sense. But it requires that we have a sense of how limited we are in our ability to know the Dhamma until we've done the Dhamma, and how little we know about our minds until we've tried to train them. There are people who give up right at the beginning. They say, I can't do this. I'll try to depend on somebody else. But, as the Buddha said, you have to be your own mainstay. Nobody else can do this work for you. And if you don't do it now, when are you going to do it? It doesn't get easier as you grow older. So you commit yourself now, because it's a good thing to commit yourself to. And then you learn from what you've done. It's not just a matter of doing what you're told. The Buddha does give you some examples, some ideas of what you can do with the breath, but they're more like riddles. He said to breathe in a way that makes you sensitive to rapture. But where are you going to sense the rapture? Where's the potential for rapture? How are you going to breathe in a way that sensitizes you to that potential? That's something you have to learn by trial and error. Breathe in a way that makes you sensitive to pleasure. Same thing. Breathe in and out, gladdening the mind, concentrating the mind, releasing the mind. Each of those is a riddle, so you're not just forcing your mind into a mold by being obedient. You're learning how to develop your own powers of commitment and reflection through asking useful questions. When the Buddha talks about that question that lies at the beginning of discernment, what, when I do it, will lead to my long-term harm and suffering? What, when I do it, will lead to my long-term welfare and happiness? There are some places where he gives the answer that you can get from other people. Practice generosity. Practice virtue. Develop the qualities of goodwill in the mind. He teaches the precepts for the areas of virtue that can be taught. But then, there are a lot of areas are not covered by the precepts, not covered by those three answers. That's where he's saying, Here's how you go about answering those questions yourself. You start by asking them of other people you trust. But then, you have to learn how to provide the answers yourself. He teaches you how to reflect as you commit yourself to the practice. So the practice requires your own act of participation, your own act of training of yourself. And that's inspiring. The Buddha puts a lot of trust in you, that this is something you can do, that you can master your unskillful thoughts. You can develop the good qualities he's talking about, and you can do it on your own initiative. It's good that he's placed his trust in us, and it feels good to have that trust placed in us. But now it's up to us to live up to that trust. The tools of the path. When the Buddha talks about the factors of the path, he lists them in the order in which you learn about them, not in the order in which you master them. You master them in the order of virtue, concentration, discernment. But when the path factors are listed, they start with the discernment factors. They start with the right view. Notice, that's right view, not right knowledge. Some people say that the Buddha doesn't have you accept anything unless you know it to be true. But you don't really know the truth of suffering, or the cause of suffering, or the cessation of suffering, or the path to the cessation, until you've actually done the duties appropriate to these things. So, when you first learn about them, it's just right view. It's a view that the Buddha recommends that you adopt for the sake of putting an end to suffering. You try it out. You take it as a working hypothesis, and you realize that it doesn't express the entirety of the Buddha's own views. Anathapindika, the householder who was a stream enterer at the time, was once asked by a group of sectarians, "What are the Buddha's views?" Here he was, a stream enterer. He'd seen the truth of the Four Noble Truths. In other words, he'd actually had a taste of the cessation of suffering. But even then he said, "I don't really know the entirety of the Buddha's views, or the entirety of the views of the awakened monks. So think of right view as the Buddha's directions to us specifically. This is how you want to look at the problem of suffering in order to solve it. See that it's in the clinging to the five aggregates. It's caused by craving, 3 kinds of craving, and it can be brought to an end through the noble eightfold path, which attacks suffering at the cause, at the craving." So you start with that picture in mind, that understanding in mind. The second discernment factor is right resolve. What's interesting is that right resolve doesn't attack all of craving. It attacks only the things that get in the way of getting into right concentration. In fact, that's one of the duties of all the remaining factors in the path after right view, to get you into right concentration. You adhere to the virtues of right speech, right action, right livelihood, because they're conducive to concentration. When you act in ways that don't cause any harm to anybody, then as you come to sit down and meditate, there are no scars in your mind. You look back on the actions of the day, and there's nothing you have to regret. At the same time, in developing virtue through these precepts, you're focusing on what? You're focusing on your intentions. That's what makes the difference between breaking a precept and not breaking a precept, the intention behind your action. So the practice of virtue gives you practice in focusing on your mind. After all, concentration is what? It's a solid, steady intention. So first, you have to get sensitive to your intentions and learn how to train them to keep them in line with the precepts. Those are the virtue factors. Then there are the concentration factors. You start with right effort. You develop the desire to get rid of any unskillful qualities that are there in the mind, and then to develop skillful ones in their place. Here, right view comes in to inform you of how and why you do that. As the Buddha said, some of the causes of suffering that you have to learn how to abandon will go away simply by looking at them. These are the ones that are there in the mind because you haven't been paying close attention. When you do pay close attention, you realize this is really stupid. You see no reason to follow those causes of suffering anymore, and they just go away. There are others, though, that are more deeply entrenched. In that case, you have to exert a fabrication. Now, what are the fabrications? The Buddha talks about 3 fabrications: bodily, verbal, and mental. These have to do with the 5 aggregates that are suffering when you cling to them. So, you actually learn how to use these aggregates. You get hands-on experience with them in using them to get rid of unskillful thoughts. You see what kind of feelings lie behind the thoughts, especially if there's a strong emotion. You look at the way you breathe to see if you can get out of the cycle when the breathing aggravates the thoughts, and the thoughts aggravate the breathing. Of course, there are perceptions and thought constructs, consciousness of these things. It's all there. You have to learn how to use these aggregates to get rid of unskillful thoughts. This is going to be a lesson for concentration, because once the mind gets into concentration, you don't just stay there. The whole point of getting into concentration is that in the process of getting it into concentration, you begin to see for yourself what the Buddha saw. What is suffering? What is the cause of suffering? And the fact that there is a cessation of suffering. You do that by seeing how the mind constructs its experience in the present moment. So, if you're constructing it in an unskillful way, you can reconstruct it by using those aggregates in new ways. This then carries on to right mindfulness, where you take, as a foundation here in the present moment, your sense of the body as you experience it. Try to be mindful to stay with this one object, the body, as you sense it. Then, be alert to what's actually going on. Is the mind staying here, or is it not? Like right now, where is your mind? Is it with the breath? Okay, fine. Try to be really sensitive to the breath. This is the quality of ardency. And what is ardency? It's basically right effort. Doing concentration is like making a cake. You have your batter, and then you fold different ingredients into the batter. In this case, you fold the right effort into right mindfulness. So, here again, you're working with those aggregates. As the Buddha said, when you're being mindful of your breath, you have to be sensitive to how your feelings and your perceptions have an impact on the mind, how they fabricate your mind. And you want to talk to yourself in ways that are conducive to getting the mind to settle down. So again, you're using the aggregates You're getting sensitive to these aggregates as you put them into practice, as you make use of them. This means that you don't just reject them right offhand, saying, well, these are aggregates, and clinging to the aggregates is bad, so I've got to let go of them. First, you have to learn how to use them properly. And in using them properly, you get really sensitive to how you're relating to them. Then this gets folded into the concentration. That's when the mind gets settled down. Here, right view comes to inform you that you don't just wallow in the pleasure of the concentration, but you do stay here long enough to enjoy it, to be nourished by it. Otherwise, any effort to understand it won't be solidly based, and you won't have the nourishment that comes from the concentration. So, allow yourself to be nourished. This is one of the lessons you learn out in the forest. If you're going to survive in the forest, you have to have a sense of well-being inside. Ajahn Fuang talked about how, when he was up in Chiang Mai during World War II, he was separated from his teacher, Ajahn Lee. He was off on his own. What made it bearable was the fact that he could get the mind into states of rapture every day. Every day. When the mind is well fed like that, then it's a lot more willing to look at its unskillful sides, its defilements, and not be bowled over by them, not try to deny them. The mind is much more on an even keel. That way, you can see, oh hey, there's some lust here still, there's some anger here still. You can see these things as puzzles to be solved, rather than as something to be embarrassed about, or as something to indulge in. You've got something better to indulge in, the concentration. But you always have, in the back of your mind, those lessons you've learned from right effort and right mindfulness. This is a constructed state, and you remember from right view that these constructions are made out of the aggregates, and when you cling to them, there's going to be suffering. One of the things you learn from right concentration is that what the Buddha said about suffering is true, in the sense of the fact that you're both constructing and clinging to things. Because with the concentration, what do you have? You've got the breath, which is form. You've got the feeling of pleasure you've created here. You've got perceptions, the images you hold in mind about the breath. Thought fabrications, your intention to stay with the breath, and consciousness, which is aware of all these things. As the Buddha said, when you get used to being in a concentrated state, there comes a point you begin to see the drawbacks of that state. You know that five-fold analysis that he gives for getting past your defilements, seeing the origination, seeing the passing away, seeing the allure, seeing the drawbacks, finally gaining escape through dispassion. Well, then you apply that same analysis to the concentration itself. Its allure, of course, is the sense of well-being that it provides. But its drawbacks are in the fact that it's fabricated. You have to keep working at it, working at it, working at it, maintaining, until it finally hits you. Wouldn't it be better if there was something that you didn't have to maintain? When you develop dispassion for the concentration, then you can go beyond it. You can do this either by analyzing one specific level of concentration you're in, or as you go from one level to another, you begin to see certain fabrications fall away. After you hit the first jhana, you can drop the verbal fabrications of directed thought and evaluation, and and you go into the second jhana. When you leave the third jhana to go into the fourth, you stop bodily fabrication. The in and out breath stops. Everything is still. It feels very full inside. You don't stop the breathing intentionally or by forcing it. It's simply that there's no felt need to breathe. So, either way, concentration is there to help you see that yes, these things are fabricated, and this is as good as fabrication can get. This is as good as the aggregates can get. Yet you still want something better. The third noble truth, which you remember from right view, promises that there is something better. That's why you're willing to let go. If this were as good as things could get, then you'd be wise to hold on. This is why, when the Buddha was first teaching not self, he taught it to the 5 brethren after they had seen that the third noble truth was true. Without having had that experience, it's really hard to let go of things. So those factors of the path are aimed at getting you into concentration. But right view is there to remind you, you don't want to stop at the concentration. You want to use the concentration to affirm the fact that yes, you are creating your suffering, and suffering is the clinging. But you don't have to do it. You can get free. So you affirm the truth of the 4 noble truths. You affirm the truth of right view. But at this point, it turns into the right knowledge, and right knowledge leads to release. Because the path, after all, is just a means to a goal. I received an email today from someone who said he'd read the book Skill in Questions, and he detected a subtle undercurrent of goal orientation that may not have been intentional. I was tempted to write back, well, any fool can see that it's goal-oriented, and it was intentional. The Buddha was the most goal-oriented person you can imagine in the world. It's just that he'd learned that you follow the path. It gets you to where you want to go. And then you can let go of the path. You're not here just to settle into the present moment as it is. You're here to dig into the present moment, take it apart, see what lies on the other side of the present moment, and how the present moment is put together through those 5 aggregates. There are things that you're doing, things that you're clinging to, and whatever sense of agency you have in doing, or a sense of the self as a consumer in enjoying what you're doing, that's gonna have to be let go of. But first, you have to do it well. Then you can put it down. The image they use in the forest tradition is of a carpenter working on a piece of furniture, like a chair. You use your tools. You pick them up. You put them down. You pick them up. You put them down until the job is done. Then you put them down for good. As far as that particular piece of furniture is concerned, in other words, as far as your mind is concerned. Then from that point on, if you see that somebody else needs a chair, somebody else needs a table, you can pick those tools up again, but you pick them up in a different way. Right now, as you're working on the tools of the practice, you have a sense that they are yours and that they belong to you. People sometimes ask, when you put aside your sense of I am, or this is me, this is mine, how can you function? Well, it's the same way you can function as if you had tools that you possessed as yours, but then you decided to allow them to be common property. You can still use them, even though the sense of ownership is gone. You can still keep them in good condition. Why? Because you see that they're good for people at large. So, It's not that you stop being motivated or stop being able to act. When you totally let go, it's simply that you no longer cling. The tools are still there. Ajahn Lee makes this point, that even though the Buddha let go of the path, he could still use the path in his work as Buddha. And that point applies to all those who are awakened. So don't be afraid that when you let go of your sense of self, you'll be hindered or unable to act. You can actually act with more skill in whatever way you see is appropriate. This is the point where, as the Buddha said, he has nothing more to teach you. Until that point, though, you want to take on right view as your working hypothesis, and then develop all the other factors of the path until you can see for yourself that that hypothesis actually is valid. It takes you to the goal that it promises. That's when you've completed the task the Buddha sets for you. As for whatever other tasks you want to pick up after that, you pick them up in a way that doesn't weigh you down.